Welcome to the Drive Time News Blast. 30 minutes, 45 for patrons of news of the day from a perspective of truth, liberty, and justice. This is Monica Perez. My partner, Brad Binkley, has not been able to be here this week. We will see him again on Monday. We're very, very happy about that. But we've also been very happy to spend this week with our gracious guest host, Cam Harless, the fabulous podcast host, producer, visionary from the Mad Ones, themadOnes.com. How
We
can
are the
people find this stuff?
MadOnes.com.
We are the MadOnes.com. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Excellent.
because someone stole my URL before I bought it. I don't even understand.
Ooh. Welcome to my world of torture. MonicaPerez.com. Ron Paul is in the same boat, but he seemed to get his back. That's all right. We don't care. We're bigger than our URLs, aren't we?
Absolutely, we are.
All right. Well, what's bigger than us and probably everything on earth is the American Jobs Plan. Like, I hate the title even. Like, if it's an infrastructure plan, why is it jobs? Actually, so what I'm talking about is the infrastructure plan that the White House rolled out, and I think it was April. Yesterday, basically, they said, oh, the White House has had to suspend negotiations with the bipartisan, yada, yada. And now some hardcore Democrats and Republicans are trying to hash out something more bipartisan. I'm going to tell you about that. I'm going to tell you my thoughts about that. But this is a good time to maybe, I don't know if you have heard this. I've said it on the show a couple of times. I was reading Our Enemy, the State by Albert J. Nock. It's a very short, free on PDF, really one of those critical things to read, like The Law by Bastiat. And what he said in there was that political power will always be insurmountable if jobs are viewed as something to be given. And it took me a long time to really understand what that meant, until I started to understand that there's an impetus to work, like a human imperative to work, that where there are fingers and soil, there is work. And for this lady, if there's dirt, I can find work to do. Even if you guys can plant stuff in the dirt, I will be happy to clean it up. So there's always work. You can give each other massages, you can sweep the floor, you can dig a hole. There is always work. The idea of the government creating jobs is like an oxymoron. It's anathema to me.
Yes. Well, and the problem with them being able to give jobs is that they can also take them away, which was, if you look at January 20th of, I guess, this year, God, everything's a blur. But the first thing that Joe Biden did was end a bunch of American jobs by saying that the pipeline could not come over the border of Canada into America.
So that battle, let's just take a moment to talk about that. That battle's been going on for years and years, right?
Yeah.
Are you saying the last nail's in that coffin? I saw a headline to that effect, but I never know.
Well, that is what the environmentalists are claiming. So back like I said, back January 20th, Joe Biden said that the Keystone XL pipeline would not continue past the border of Canada into America, losing people's jobs. One of the big things in the election and in the campaign that was a thorn in his side was how he had talked about clean energy and getting rid of fracking, and then having to go into Pennsylvania, where he's from, and say, no, I'm not going to get rid of fracking. And he had to go back and forth over this thing. But the Independent reported that this is their headline: fossil fuel era rapidly coming to a close. Climate activists rejoice as Keystone XL pipeline is axed.
Okay, so there's a lot in there.
It's a lot.
Finish if you want, but I can pick up on that for sure. Is what you said about they can give it, they can take it away. That is true. That the fact that he could validly, plausibly go to Pennsylvania and promise those jobs means that the president, who should have no power whatsoever over policy, has the power of life and death and jobs and no jobs in a way that I'm sure medieval monarchs only dreamed of.
Yeah.
So So, anyway, what other thoughts you have on that? And then I've got a lot on the infrastructure plan.
Oh, well, I was just gonna say that it's for me, like, I've been told that, I have a sunny demeanor and I have a good heart, so I'm even though I'm extremely pissed off most of the time, I don't sound it. So, let me tell you,
That
these
completely contradicts what I would think of you given, I think, something we're gonna cover in the Patron 15 about your violent whiteness.
yeah, we'll definitely talk about how violent my whiteness is.
Come on, Fat Thor. Emphasis on Thor.
Well, that's the thing, I hate environmentalists, and I mean, I don't hate people who want to do better by the ground and by the
Okay.
soil and by our earth.
Conservationists. My
Right.
father
I
always called himself a
hate
conservationist.
right, conservationists are great. Environmentalists, they are just flexing over this. So, the Keystone XL pipeline was supposed to go over 1,700 miles from Canada down to the Gulf Coast, and it was supposed to move 830,000 barrels of crude oil daily, which would lower Americans' costs when it comes to buying gas and heating their homes and all of these things. And it would give jobs to American the American people. And like I said, Joe Biden axed it on January 20th. And then I guess yesterday or today, it showed up in my feed today. Um, the the company TC Energy up in Alberta talked to the Alberta's government and then canceled their part of the pipeline. And so these people, they say it's indigenous actors and environmentalists, they are raising their flag of victory. And they're the guy, his name is David Turnbull. He's from the Oil Change International. He said that the cancellation of Keystone XL is a reminder that this project was never needed and never in the public interest, and that it's time for the fossil fuel era to rapidly come to a close. He said these projects are dangerous and unnecessary for all the same reason. Oh, sorry. He's also has two others that he's trying to shut down: the Line 3 pipeline from Alberta to Wisconsin, and the Dakota Access pipeline, which you remember there was a lot of hullabaloo about that several years ago with all the indigenous people and then random white people on Facebook pretending that they were there by tagging themselves on
Didn't
Facebook.
AOC use it as a launching off point?
I believe she did, but they're trying to get rid of those as well, and he also wants to lose those American jobs and those Canadian jobs. He said that they're dangerous and unnecessary for all the same reasons, and they must be halted by Biden and his climate advisor to keep their commitments on climate change and indigenous rights.
Okay. So I think historically, the indigenous thing, they have often been riddled with corruption and can be bought off. But I want to get to the infrastructure thing and what this has to do with that, which is they. So, yes, you make a great point. He calls it the American Jobs Plan at the same time that he takes away what I'm going to call mainly private enterprise. Its
Yeah,
embroilment with the government is really by force because they need permission to do these things.
right.
So they could probably buy the land they needed in arm's length transactions, but they do need permission.
Yeah, not to mention the worker on the ground who has nothing to do with any of this and just wants to feed his family.
Right. Although he's not entitled to a job, but it
Right.
is, you don't, the government is not coming to give him a job or anything like that. But if a private corporation wants to buy property and there aren't, so what we're talking about is externalities. Like,
Mhm.
are you putting people in danger? And that I'm not prepared to talk about that right now. But
Yeah.
so Biden is acting like this thing is a jobs plan, which would be the opposite of what he's doing with the XL pipeline. But what this infrastructure thing is, it brings a lot of other agenda items to the fore, especially this idea of new infrastructure being the thing that ushers in an era of total dependency when it comes to transportation. So Gerald Celente always would say guns, gold, and a getaway. Gold,
Mhm.
guns, and a getaway. And systematically they are eliminating all three of those things: gold, guns, and a getaway. So the getaway is you need fossil fuels for autonomous transportation. I believe they wanna get rid of fossil fuels so that your transportation is contingent on what they call green energy. I'm not sure how green it is with the batteries and such, but you're not gonna own your own electric car. You're not gonna own your driverless car in this
Right.
future that this is ushering in.
Well, and they want they want you to use public transportation. Like there is, I don't know if you've heard of this. I don't have an article to link to, but on Adam Ruins Everything, which is a terribly
Yes,
propagandistic
yes,
show if you've
yes.
never seen it.
Yeah.
Um, he was talking about, and there's this push within the environmentalist world that cars were a mistake. No one should own a car.
Oh, I saw that
Cities,
one.
yeah, cities should
It was
all be small
terrible.
enough so you to walk everywhere. They don't like the rural thing. It's amazing.
Yeah, no, I saw it was a lot of propaganda, and the other episodes of his are totally propaganda. But okay, so the American Jobs Plan, it's supposed to cost over $2 trillion. It is part of Biden's Build Back Better initiative, which had three different plans: the American Rescue Plan, the American Family Plan, and then this, which is the American Jobs Plan. The American Rescue Plan was signed into law in March. It was supposedly a COVID relief bill. Again, $2 trillion. If you don't see the handwriting on the wall of the international bankers and that the idea is to deeply indebt us at any cost, and that may even be a stepping stone to a bankruptcy that involves um, really ushering out even old currency and then having new currency like that. I believe that this tremendous unsustainable debt has a transformational element to it. Now this infrastructure bill Biden has touted as a transformative effort to overhaul the nation's economy. So that's interesting. That is part of the Build Back Better thing, and that's alarming. So what it says, just this is just the wiki's summary of the infrastructure bill that I'm talking about. It's going to spend large sums of money on physical infrastructure like roads and transit systems. This is going to take into account that the end of fossil fuels has arrived. That's, I'm sure, is going to try to reflect that. At home infrastructure like water pipes and broadband, just to make sure that all your rural people are plugged into the propaganda machine. The care economy, which I have a lot to say about that too, home and community based care for seniors and people with disabilities. I've been thinking about how they systematically outsource every single solitary, untaxed, uncorporatized piece of effort we ever do. So what do? I drive my kids around. I go shopping. I cook. I clean. I go to the grocery store. Every one of those things has been corporatized and taxed over time. So to the point where I could just go to the grocery store. I would drive my car to the grocery store, shop, bring it home. That's like 2 hours it takes me maybe to do that, maybe an hour and a half. And now I can pay them to do it. So that is something that then I have to earn the money to pay them to do it. It's that transaction is taxed. My earnings are taxed. It's same thing with childcare and everything else. So this to me is just a commodification of the consumer. And it's part of that. That is a major reset. Probably a great reset thing. It's going to invest in research and development. It's going to create millions of jobs, they say, bolster labor unions. I find it hard to believe it could do both of those things, expand labor protections. And you know what expands labor protections is a free market, address climate change. It says that the new spending was to have been paid for by raising the corporate tax rate from 21% to 28% and ending subsidies for fossil fuel companies, increasing the global minimum tax from roughly 13% to 21%, as well as deficit spending. So I'm going to touch on a few of those things because Biden is over in Europe right now with the G7 wanting to do the create a corporate tax rate floor for the world, which to me is just insulating them from the competitive pressure that governments can face when they have terrible policies and other countries are going to respond. I could talk about that too. But one thing I want to make sure I address is that the Republicans, I guess Romney is the one who's leading the charge on the kind of breakout room between Democrats and Republicans to hash out a plan in the wake of talks breaking down. It says new talks on infrastructure face old problems. This is a headline from the Wall Street Journal. How to pay for it. Discussions intensify among a group of Senate Republicans and Democrats. But so what Romney said was that all we care about is not no new taxes. And I would say I never wanna he's such a fake Republican, but I never wanna hear anyone say that because, first of all, you have to say, is infrastructure one of the 18 enumerated powers in the Constitution? Is it constitutional at all? There was an infrastructure push in the 19th century that resulted in at state levels, many states passed constitutional amendments banning, forbidding any infrastructure program. It's barely constitutional on the state level, and it is unconstitutional on the federal level. I don't want them having that power, that spending. And then the other thing is that spending is taxation. Spending is taxation. The last thing I ever want to see is spending decoupled from taxation because that creates a moral hazard of taxing without representation future generations. So if you're allowed to reap the benefits of the spending and you're pushing off the cost of it by not raising taxes and thereby doing deficit spending, you're indebting unborn people. You're indebting people who are too young to vote. The only ones who are really signing up for that are immigrants. Immigrants know what they're getting into, or they should. But I find this is offensive morally. It's unconstitutional, and it's scary because they are using it to implement a fundamental transformation of the national economy. And guess who's going to lose? Anyone who's made any progress at all trying to claw their way out of wage slavery.
And it's there's so much to react to there.
I know. I'm sorry. You got to take notes. I had
One
to get out the actual data, the information, and then you can react.
well, one of the things that I just wanted to say, is 2 days ago, there were several articles in the corporate media that were talking about how right now job openings have reached a record high of 9.3 million as of April, and there aren't the number of jobs actually is more than the number of unemployed people from what I've read. So right now they're talking about jobs plans after they've kind of subsidized people's lives through the coronavirus reaction with the unemployment and all of these things. And there are people who went from not making much money to making more from getting unemployment. And right now there are a bunch of regular jobs, unskilled labor jobs, and more that don't make them as much as they get from unemployment. So they're not taking the jobs.
When is that slated to end? Soon, right?
I would think so. I think someone was saying something about July, but I don't have that in front of me.
Yeah, I know the eviction moratorium was supposed to end June 30th. I actually had some stuff on the housing too, which I don't know if we'll get to, but they that's a that's a whole nother thing about how they want to restructure the infrastructure with
Yeah.
housing, who owns it and what it looks like, where it is. Biden wants to trump zoning laws at the local level so that middle class neighborhoods would have to take kind of like public housing or cheaper housing or whatever. I would like that. I would be okay with that law. Just I wouldn't really, but I would love to see in a law like that that the only zip codes it applies to is the top 5 earning zip code, the top 5 income zip code in the state. So it's going to be like in Scarsdale,
Yeah.
New York. So like in Beverly Hills, like those would be the only places that would have to suffer through this.
Well, and one of the things that I've heard online today when you're talking about housing is people that by all means should be able to get loans and should be able to buy houses, not being able to because BlackRock is buying up houses. You know about BlackRock? They're
Yes.
buying up these houses and they're doubling up to doubling the asking price on houses, and regular people instead of are getting edged out by a corporation when it comes to them wanting to buy their own house and have the American dream. And it's just right now everything is so weird, and I it makes you wonder what's
Well,
going on.
it's a very big picture thing. The Great Reset is going to, I really feel like they want to make absolutely everything we do, need, want, consume, and produce very, you know,
Borrowed.
digitized.
I said borrowed.
But digitized, and I also actually mean figuratively digitized, like in digits,
Gotcha.
like in pixels, pixelated, so that you have this cookie cutter household. They don't have people who have their own um they can't put down roots really because they don't own the house. And when you don't have roots, you're more likely to move. So that breaks all those ties. at the same time that it makes labor commoditized. A lot of things will, you can surveil people digitally. You can surveil people. Like this is one reason they want everyone to move into newer apartments, is that they're going to not have niches. They're not going to have, a doorway, or there's not going to have any features like that. They're not going to have the landscaping. You can see them. They're cookie cutter. Rosa Quar used to point this out. The newer buildings, they go right up to the sidewalk. There aren't trees in front of them. There used to have a push towards having like a green space in the middle, but now it looks like it's the opposite. And I think all of these, including the transportation, I mean, I have a whole list of the things that are being treated this way, all in the vision. As I say, the vision is that everything should look like an international airport terminal, which are like white lacquer, chrome, blue neon, and you have your
Corporate.
mat, your jumpsuit and your embedded bit whatever blockchain on everything. I see that. So the last thing I want to get to, because you have something huge for the last story of the free 30 that's going to take some time and is very deep. So I want to just hit one more thing, which is this. So Biden is doing this G7 thing over there right now. And one of the things that he has proposed is to establish or raise or whatever this global minimum corporate tax of 15%, with an eye to making it even higher. And for me, there's so much wrong with that, in that we we don't want international law. The ability to tax is the ability to destroy. And I have always thought that the best thing you could do for your country is to eliminate all corporate taxation and all subsidies for higher education. So
Mm,
right now we have indiscriminate subsidies for higher education. So our educated people that we're putting money in are getting like jazz and English majors.
yeah.
They're getting degrees in that they absolutely cannot use. You end up being a secretary, even if you're the best jazz musician. Well, not the very best, but you'd have to be one in a million to really make a living being a jazz musician. You probably end up as a secretary. So if 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 you took away that indiscriminate subsidy, which misallocates resources, and at the same time you enticed corporations to come, you could, by having no taxes at all, they will reinstate what I remember seeing when I was growing up. Corporations all had, or the corporations in our town all had college programs. So if you were a secretary, you could, my sister did this. She was a secretary and she went to school at night and became a pharmaceutical chemist, and then got a job there. And she got a master's there, and she became, very successful and respected professional. And she was hard. She had to work at night, but what else are you going to do? Drink? But then they say, okay, what happens is one country will lower the tax rate, and so a company will come into your country, exploit your education, and send the taxes to the headquarters in another country. And it's like, okay, that's just so corporate taxes don't work. And that actually makes me think about how taxation really is, if you want to even be a minarchist and say that government is joint self-defense and that we're just doing that, then it should be tied to what you're saying it's for, which is the protection of person and property. And I know nobody likes the wealth tax thing, but the income tax thing or the corporate tax thing doesn't even have any logic to it. Is the guy who makes $1 million a year and the secretary who makes 50,000 a year, who works for him, they're using the exact same resources, except for maybe contracts. Why should he have to pay? Not only he shouldn't have to pay a flat rate. Like they should pay like a head tax. Like they should each have to pay $1,000 a year. And then if you want to protect your property, the title of your property, contract and stuff like that, then you pay as a percentage of that, which people call a wealth tax. And it maybe is, it's more like a title tax if you want to use the government's resource. So the idea of a corporate tax is inherently um disconnected from the idea of what taxes are for. And then, of course, Yellen is saying that's so that we can have an even playing field, so we can help people out, yada, yada. Taking away, reducing the amount of prosperity that you can get with business, productivity, is presuming that she can figure out a better way to use that money. And I would say they can't.
No. I would say it's dangerous for them to think they can.
Right. And it's, and
Centralization is death.
Yeah, and they have not proven, it's just a bunch of gobbledygook. There was too much material for today. I wanted to get deep into everything, and of course, we have such a short show, so what are you gonna do? But we do have a really fantastic last story of the free 30, and we can pick up these other themes in the Patron 15 if you like. But before we get to that last story, let me tell you, I have a little poem. I'm not sure how relevant it is, but it's metaphorical, and I'm gonna explain it to you in the Patron 15. The Bidens are reds, violence is blue, New Yorkers are haters, and so are you. I will deconstruct that in the Patron 15. And of course, a big shout out to the sponsor of today's show, same sponsor as yesterday. I just wanted to remind everybody that government-scam.com/Monica is that's Etienne de la Boetie squared, whom you have seen on the show. And we have a Rokfin video. We put it in the audio. He's great. His idea has always been just to take what he makes this coffee table book. He was on James Corbett. He kind of walked him through it page by page. It's a 0 to 60 red pill for visual learners. So it sits at your coffee table. Somebody will look at it, and I'm telling you, I have seen it happen. And many, many people have bought this book who listen to the show and have written back to me like that is the thing. And it's really practical. It has a lot of links. So you have the physical book, but you can go to the website. It talks about events that are coming during the year. It talks about action items. It's excellent. He also sells on that website some of Larkin Rose is another one who he just wakes people up in a very simple way, takes the time. It's not like a one-off blog post. It's not, oh, you've got to listen to this podcast. These guys have really thought it through. They have refined the argument. And with these Larkin Rose books, these are things that I have thought of myself. So What Anarchy Isn't is a great depiction. It's teeny little book. I mean, honestly, I don't know if it's for teens, but it appeals to teens. It's got little cartoons in it and stuff. And it's kind of funny. The pictures are really funny. And it explains what I think, Cam, you've said, which is when they talk about what anarchy is, what they're really talking about is the government,
Yeah, status
right?
quo.
Yeah, they're actually what they're scaring you with is what the world would be like without them doing all those scary things to you, and it doesn't make sense. The world would be a much less scary place. And then that's what anarchy isn't, but he also has the most dangerous superstition, which just walks through one by one how the necessity of government is this idea that you can't live without it is extremely dangerous. And it in this book, I think, holds the key to the chains, the mental chains, the mental slavery. There was a famous quote, I wish I had it handy, about that the chains of slavery cannot be unlocked on the body if the mind does not know it is enslaved. And that, I think, is what this book goes to. They're really very, very good. They're not for us, they're for people who we want to reach.
Hmm.
So that's that. And if you liked our sponsors, support our sponsors. If you like our show, support our sponsors. And if you like our show, support our show. And one thing that you can do if you've been missing Binkley, go over to rockfin.com/propaganda report and watch our videos there. That's where Binkley's fantastic research, and he's got his finger on the pulse of the propagandists. They are revealing their plans in real time, and he picks them up sometimes within a day. And then after he breaks it down for us, we see it unroll in the propaganda machine for 2 weeks after that. It's really a way to be prepared and to direct so that when you see it coming across the propaganda feed, you can tell your friend, go watch this video or go look at what this organization was cooking up last week, and you'll see this is totally this is astroturf stuff they're doing here, including, I think the last one was about propagandizing teens to get the vaccine. The one before that was using it was the guy who did the Council for Combating Digital Hate was in charge of getting people of color to take the vaccine. It's really interesting where this propaganda comes from. It was last year we had ones about how to justify violence when you're at BLM protests, literally. And it was
Wow.
white people. So we're going to get Cam, that'll go to what we're talking about, the Patron 15. Without further ado, let us get to that big story, the big last story of the free 30, Cam. Here's the thing. So I was asking you, we were talking about solutions. You called me a solution. You said I want to be a solutionitarian or something.
It's Maj Toure calls the people with Black Guns Matter solutionaries.
I have to tell you something about Maj Toure. Funny that you should mention it at the end. Before we break for the Patron 15, I'll tell you. But you tell me. So you said you told me about some solutions in your newly adopted state, and I want to hear about it.
So, one of the things that's going around right now is if you've ever been on Twitter, especially in the more liberty minded parts of Twitter, there's a battle going on right now. There's a battle between, uh, like, one big one is between Tho Bishop and some of the Libertarian Party slash Mises Caucus people. And this is something that I find really interesting. I'm essentially anti-politics at this point in my life. I don't want to have anything to do with it at all. And so when I'm looking at the different solutions, I'm not saying I'm special, but I insofar as I'm not going to do either, I do feel like I have a little bit better of a look at weighing which one makes more sense and which one's more strategic. And one of the people that does that is Tho Bishop, who works with the Mises Institute out of Auburn with Jeff Deist and all of the great people there. And one of his points is that we should be doing coalition building and fighting against um, the overstepping of the federal government on a local level. We should be doing it on a state level, and that we should utilize the power of the GOP and use entryism to get in there and change that. And he's getting a lot of pushback. And I asked him today, I said, I'd like to talk about this and I'd like to share your thoughts and I'd like to do them justice, because I feel like not a lot of people give him the time to actually state what his point is. And he did it. He sent me some good stuff. And what he told me was that politics is not as much about politicians as it is about the people that support the politicians. And so one of the things that you have to realize as
Hold on,
someone
hold
who
on.
is
Okay. So say that sentence again.
that politics is less about politicians than it is about people that support the politicians.
Okay, got
So
it.
it's
Power to
less
the
about
people.
the yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I
less
understand.
about the figurehead than the
Yes, I
people.
understand.
And as libertarians, especially in our sect of things, Austrian economics is a big part of that. And so he talked about how the Austrian economics is based on the subjective theory of value. And so products have their price based on what utility they have, what the person thinks they're worth. And we need to apply that to the political system and to the value of politics, which means there are people who are voters that want to help us in the things that we care about that we're not talking to. And
And there is a corollary with that subjective theory of value, which is that it's reliant on Mises' idea of praxeology. So when
mhm.
people say economics, well, there is no ideal world. People don't know their own utility and people are irrational. That's an answer to rational. And Mises says, I don't care if they're irrational or it doesn't matter. It's what actually happens that I care about. We
Yeah,
want
man acts.
Yes, and we want and there's an impact to that.
And so his major point is
And
that
that's why sorry, the pricing mechanism, which reflects the subjective theory of value, which reflects praxeology, is perfect. There's no one has to assess that. So you can say, well, the person's irrational. It doesn't matter. If there are pencils on the shelf, you're charging too much for those pencils, or nobody wants them at all. It doesn't matter why. It doesn't matter if they should want it. And those pencils will disappear from the shelves and pens will be there instead. And you'll just take this. You will respond with the supply and demand with the price mechanism. You will respond to the reality, and then your reality will change if people aren't buying it or selling it.
yeah, and one of his points goes right into that, which is there are a lot of people who are willing to vote who are mad. They're angry at our enemies. They're angry at DC and want to have leaders that tell DC to go die in a fire. And that is what we need to tap into. Is these are people who over the last year and a half have been destroyed, financially, etc. And Florida is a special place insofar as DeSantis is one of those guys who has actively fought um, centralized science by having his own doctors to talk about COVID instead of going to the CDC and just following what the WHO says. He flexed against the vaccine passports and COVID lockdowns. And there are a lot of people who are disaffected, who are angry, who want to change things and want to fight DC, which is centralized power. And that we need to work with these people and work with these figures that they follow because Trump wasn't good. Let's not, Trump is not a great guy. However, he inflamed people to want to act. And there are a lot of people with an axe to grind. And so, right now, one of the coolest things that I've seen is how well mocking the media has changed things. Because I think that what we're looking at is we need to recognize that the tyranny in the world today isn't purely from the state as a lot of people understand it. It's not just the government. It's the cathedral, as Mencius Moldbug or Michael Malice call it. It's the mixture of universities, the state, and media. And so one of the cool things that's been happening is DeSantis actually uses a phrase from anarchist Michael Malice when he's yelling at the press. He doesn't call them the mainstream media, which I think is good. He calls them the corporate press, which dehumanizes it, which makes it something ugly, and it's not mainstream because calling the corporate media the mainstream media helps them. It says
Nice.
they're sane. It says that they're the people that you can work with and
Right.
listen to, and they're not. It's the
So
corporate media.
so true.
It's fake, it's churned out, it's designed poorly. And so seeing that happen and seeing what what can happen in Florida means that if we can take that energy, that anger, that frustration, and make more people understand and connect with people who realize we're living in a corrupt empire and that the only hope we have is to mobilize the victims of the empire, that's how we're going to make change. It's not going to be in some little walled off cocoon of people who all agree. It's not going to be ideological twins that we have out there. We have to reach into the different areas that inflame people, into the different areas that people care about, and work with them on that single issue to get that taken care of. That's what Murray Rothbard did. He left the Libertarian Party and he tried to work with the New Left. He tried to work with the paleo conservatives. Is called the paleo strategy, and that's what Tho Bishop is pushing for, is to partner with people who are as pissed off as we are about the things we should be pissed off, to the point that we can actually change them and use the existing structure as a weapon against the federal government.
Could it be that is one would it be consistent with what you're saying to say it would be an issue by issue
Yeah.
thing?
Yeah. So it's like I think that what he's doing is he's investing in DeSantis rhetorically and talking about that right now because he's in Florida. That is his local
Yeah.
area, that's his state. And so DeSantis is fighting the corporate power. He's fighting the press and he's fighting DC. And that's something that he believes in and that more people should. I don't want DeSantis to leave Florida though, because I mean, he made it so that I can buy groceries and don't have to have a passport.
What would he do? Become president? Like, why would he leave?
People want him to, but I
Okay.
don't want that.
So so is he legit? Is there any possibility that what he's doing, cuz I'm always afraid that if he is empowering the state to tell private corporations that they can't have a vaccine passport. Yes, we're in desperate times, and but it's so ideologically, I mean, just because it's so profoundly a violation of private property rights, I find it hard to,
Well, and I would say that when you're looking at this, you have to look at who are the people that would be pushing for this and
you
lobbying for
know,
vaccine passports, which is
that's
Target,
this
Walmart.
is this is what why what you're saying really appeals to me, and it's I have to expand my mind to it, and
Yeah.
that's why praxeology is the kind of thing I keep thinking about, is that the COVID thing, absolutely, for sure, no question about it, the policies were, I would say, designed, but certainly had the effect of benefiting greatly the government connected corporations, Target, Walmart, like you're talking about, at the expense of even smaller, like multi-site businesses or mom and pop shops, which were already on the way out. Any regulatory barriers like health things, all that kind of stuff will really promote it. And so now you're look what we're really looking at is fascism. You're
Yeah.
really looking at, and it's actually what I
True.
call the backdoor fascism, because it's the corporations that are then imposing laws that are so unconstitutional. The government couldn't, even in this post-constitutional world, they couldn't even get away with that. So they say to Target, they say to Walmart, "We will continue to suppress your competition, and we will continue to subsidize your, not only your access to finance, but your not only your access to finance, but also your R&D and all that kind of stuff. And
Mhm.
if, if we make sure that people can't go to the store anymore, only guys with delivery services like you, yada yada." So, and then those people come and put these, and then you can see, like with the World Economic Forum stuff and other things that Binkley's brought to Rokfin, for example, that they say, look, what the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get our corporate allies to impose all of these rules.
Mhm.
Then we're going to get the lawyers on board. Then we're going to get the politicians on board. So I think we have to realize that the ideology of the Constitution is now used as a weapon against us. And
Yes.
I am 100% in favor of not compromising at all with the Constitution. At the state level, violating private property rights isn't a violation of the Constitution, actually.
Right.
I think he can do that, because
Yeah.
I am also like a big 10th Amendment fan. So
Yeah.
for me, states really can do whatever they want, and then you can move, which is what you're seeing happening right now.
Mhm.
You're seeing that happening, but it's highly manipulated. I think I have to open my mind to this.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that we have to look at when it comes to what's happened over the last year is, you're right. This is fascist. This is cronyist. I mean, look at what how much up is Pfizer up this year in profit? $60 billion, something
Oh,
like that,
that was a while ago.
right?
It's
Yeah,
more than that.
billions of
Yes, yes, that
dollars.
might have been the 2020 number. Yeah.
Right, and so, they're pairing with Walmart and all these places to get the vaccine out, where they're making money off of administering the vaccine from Pfizer and the government. Like, all of this, like, there are people who are purist anarchists who won't use a term like the cathedral or anything like that, but this is the state. The corporations were created by the state and given special permissions by the state. To think of them as separate from the state is a mistake, and so not Robert, DeSantis, what he was doing, whether or not, I mean, the private property thing's a little weird, but at the end of the day, what he was doing was fighting the federal government, and he was
Yeah.
fighting for federalism.
I'll just say 2 last things. I say this all the time, that libertarians die by the sword, but they don't live by it. So you'll, you will not allow you'll fall on to you'll fall on your sword for the law, the
Yeah.
Constitution, and defend all the good things in it. Not that it's perfect, but all the good things in it. And then here is a guy, DeSantis, who has the power to stop that vaccine in the corporate level. That is
Mhm.
part of the law. We defend the law. He has the power. He's obviously exercising the power. You could accept the good part of a bad dictatorial structure. There's
Trade-off.
no reason to fight the thing that is gonna help you live to fight another day. I mean, it's
And
hard because I'm very ideological, but and that's a slippery slope.
Well, and
But
that's one of the things that Tho has said, I just wanna mention is, we talk a lot about trade-offs for people who aren't willing to recognize them. And so for me, DeSantis and the vaccine passport thing was a trade-off. It was, do I want these corporations to decide whether or not I can go to the grocery store, or do I want to protect corporations' rights to property?
well, and because they have used so many government benefits, privileges, like
Mhm.
Chuck Schumer said to Intel, let's use the power of the federal government to give you an advantage and just put your chip shop in New York. So they have exploited the power of government to keep competitors out. See, so what you really want to do is say, okay, you just want a competing grocery chain. that doesn't have vaccine passports. But what they can do then, a lot of times what they'll do at that point is they'll say, well, somebody got COVID at your grocery store. It was possible for you to make a vaccine mandate, which would have saved that person's life. And now you're liable for that person's life because there was an alternative that your competitor is demonstrating was viable. That's how tort law works. So we
Yeah.
can't get into that. But and I also think that Q is harnessing that power that Tho wants to harness because that power, well, Q is a limit. That power that Trump imparted by galvanizing the angry, that's a limited hangout. The powers that be were using it for their own
Mhm.
purposes to create a cult of personality around Trump so that he could do things that are against our interests and against our ideology, but they unleashed something and Q is there to control it. Now it'd be much better if Tho were controlling it.
I absolutely agree, and I probably didn't do him justice, but I tried. I
Well,
tried to
I'm
listen to
happy. I
this.
would love to have a conversation with him. You think he's open to that?
Oh, absolutely. He was
Okay.
very excited. He was like, "Yes, sure. I'll make this list for you."
Oh,
So was
okay,
Mike,
alright.
by the way,
Well, then I'll
from the
talk
10th
to those
Amendment
guys.
Center.
That would be
Talk to him.
fantastic. I would love to become more educated. Maybe we'll do a three-way, as it were.
I'd love it.
So so look, I have a couple of great, things to mention. I wanted to thank some of our latest patrons, Andrew, James, Nick, thank you, thank you. I want, have a shout out that I chose for you. I feel like I could be wrong, Cam. I thought I knew this about you, that this is something that you could give snaps to. Eric shouts out the creator of the universe and our heavenly Father and his son Christ Jesus and God's gift of the Holy Spirit, which is available to all who believe that God raised Jesus from the dead. Through the acceptance of the shed blood of Jesus Christ and his resurrection, we are delivered from the evil of this world. May God's love and peace be with you all. I think you
Amen,
can
brother.
get behind that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, Eric, for that profound sentiment on this last day of Cam's special appearance, and we can offer up some prayers too for Binkley and his family. He lost his mom. Yesterday was her funeral and also his birthday.
Bummer.
So we'll have to. I decided that we're going to move his birthday to the next DPP, and then we'll
Nice.
toast him there. But I absolutely have to tell people real quick about the Freedom Fest. I'm going to host a stage at Freedom Fest. It's July 21st to the 24th. It's in South Dakota. It's going to have a lot of really cool events and people. It's like 3 or 4 days. It's $499 if you use FF21 Liberty, FF21 Liberty, all caps at freedomfest.com. You get 10% off and it's only $399 to add a guest. That's July 1st. And it is, let me just tell you, there's some really fun things. It's the theme is healthy, wealthy, and wise, which is exactly my theme for the year. Exactly. Uh, and they're going to do some fun things. They're going to go to the Mount Rushmore. I kind of want to do that. I remember as a kid, I went to Mount Rushmore in a helicopter and it was the memory of a lifetime. But you would not believe the people, the speakers who are going to be there. Guess, I'm going to give you one guess for one speaker. I didn't mention yesterday, Cam. I gave you a hint earlier. One guess, one speaker.
Hmm. I have nothing. Tell me. I just wanna know.
Maj Touré.
Oh,
I'm
nice.
going to meet him and hopefully I'll interview him while I'm there. How fun would
My
that
f
be?
my friend Dent is gonna be there. He also has a plan
Oh,
to, decentralize some stuff and get rid of property taxes where
oh,
he lives. I'm
I've
sure
met
you'd love to hear
him.
about that.
I might ask you to hook me up with Maj if you can figure that out. Dave Rubin's going to be there. Dr. Drew, John Mackey. I really want to pick his brain, but I doubt I'll get access. Larry Elder, Tom Woods, Joe Jorgensen, Dave Smith, Grover Norquist, James O'Keefe, John McWhorter, who, oh my gosh, John McWhorter. He wrote a great book called Authentically Black years and years ago. He's a Berkeley English professor. Oh my gosh. Dennis Quaid. I'd rather have Randy, but whatever. Catherine Bernard, Atlanta's local favorite. Catherine Bernard, I love her. Doug Casey. Wow, this is going to be cool. Now, I wish I hadn't really let that sink in because now I'm nervous because I have to MC one of the stages. I'm totally nervous about that. Anyway, well, we can talk more about that in the Patron 15 if you want, but we have a lot to talk about in the Patron 15. I have to deconstruct my little poem. So, with that, let me tell you that you can find your Drive Time News Blast every weekday afternoon at thepropreport.com or your favorite podcasting platform under the Propaganda Report podcast feed. And if you want extra content on a daily basis, go to patreon.com/propaganda report. That includes the Patron 15, which we're about to get into. Join up at propaganda at Patreon, and we will talk to you tomorrow or in the Patron 15. And as Binkley would say, have a fantastic rest of your day.